Bravo. Like we said, we're going to be starting the shiur this week again with a very powerful story of the Rebbe Shlita Melech Ha'Moshiach. And this is a story that is going back quite a few years ago. There was a inauguration of a Beis HaMedrash, a study hall in the town of Efrat. And the Rabbanim over there invited a guest speaker. Then this guest speaker was the Rosh Kollel, the head of the Kollel of Mitsuyanim, of outstanding Kollel students from Yerushalayim, I believe. And when he arrived, he decided, and we're talking about basically a Beis HaMedrash, a study hall of Yidden from the Lithuanian school of teaching, Litvish, and also this Rosh Kollel, who also was from the Lithuanian school of teaching. But he, from all the stories or all the things that he could have spoken about, he decided he's going to speak about the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and not only the Lubavitcher Rebbe, but how he personally was connected with a mephus, a unbelievable miracle through the Rebbe. And the reason for this, because he scanned and looked around, and as he was told, the person who actually gave the full support apparently for the building of the Beis HaMedrash, of the study hall, was none other than an anthropist from Australia, the Gevir Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Gutnick. So he decided, since the person that gave all the money to build the building is a Lubavitcher, he'll tell his Lubavitcher's personal Lubavitcher story. And it goes back to when he first got married, and for many years they were waiting for a child to be born without any success. And they went to the best of doctors, and they went to all the Litvish Rabbonim, the great Torah scholars, and received their blessings. They went and looked for all kinds of different segulas that would be able to bring on the ability to have children, but nothing that they tried worked. And then finally, there was a woman that approached his wife, and she told her, "Listen, I know that you're not from the Hasidic from the Hasidic walk, but there is one person that is known by all the Jewish nation, of whom's blessings don't come back empty-handed. And this is the Rebbe Shlita Melech Ha'Moshiach." And she said, "Why don't you go and try him?" At this point, she goes home and she speaks to her husband, and her husband puts his foot down, and he says, "By no means, we're not Hasidim. We don't follow the Hasidic Admorim, the Hasidic leaders. We stay with our neck of the woods, with the Litaim, and that's the way it's going to be in our home." Months go by and they still don't have children, and she again approaches her husband, and this time he refuses. But this time she didn't take no for an answer, and she says to her husband with a very, very deep stare, she says, "Are you willing to go and to pass the merit of having a child just because of your personal custom not to go outside the Lithuanian school of thought and teaching, and the rabbis? Here you're told that there is some type of a hope, and there's a chance." And to this he wasn't able to answer. He broke and he said, "Okay, you know what? No, if it won't help, it won't hurt." And they go to New York. They come to Crown Heights. They receive a yechidus, a personal audience by the Rebbe. The moment the couple goes in and the woman passes the doorstep of the Rebbe's office, she breaks into a hysteric crying. and she's crying rivers of tears. That's the way the head of the kollel, who was her husband, described it. And she couldn't get herself together. She couldn't compose herself, and she couldn't calm herself down. Until finally the Rebbe spoke, and the Rebbe said, you should calm down. You shouldn't be worried, because you're going to have a child. To this, wow, she snapped out of her crying, and she calmed down. At this point, the Rebbe turns to him, to her husband, the Rosh Kollel, then the fresh, the Kollel student, and the Rebbe asks him, "What do you do?" So he thinks a moment, and he says, "I study in Kollel. I'm a Kollel student." And as if the Rebbe didn't hear what he said, the Rebbe looks at him again, and he says, "But how do you occupy yourself?" How do I occupy myself? He didn't understand what the Rebbe wants. So he again was quiet, but he answered. He answered to the Rebbe that he is a student in the kollel. He sits and learns Torah all day. And to this, the Rebbe again didn't let him off the hook. The Rebbe looks at him and he says, "But what do you do?" And here, all of a sudden, there was a bolt of lightning that goes through his mind. And he says to himself, "What do? I sit and learn Torah for myself. But what do I do for others? What do I do for my fellow Jew? I literally do nothing, because all the Torah that I learn, I only learn for myself." He picks his eyes up after thinking about this concept, and he sees the Rebbe is smiling from corner to corner. At this, he realizes that the Rebbe literally read his mind. And this is exactly what the Rebbe meant by what does he do, or what he isn't doing yet. This was not the end. All of a sudden, the Rebbe asks him another question. The Rebbe asks him, "Tell me, where do you live?" This was already something that the person wasn't able to handle, because what exactly would it give? What benefit would it have to the Rebbe for him to explain to the Rebbe where he lives? He lived in Yerushalayim, he lived in Jerusalem, but he lived in one of whoever knows Yerushalayim, you have the main streets like Yafo and King George and Bar Ilan and Yirmiyahu Street. But then most of Yerushalayim is made up of like small paths and alleyways. And he wasn't able to understand what benefit would it give the Rebbe, and what would the Rebbe know about the alleyway that he lives in. But he told the Rebbe the name of the alleyway that he lives in. The Rebbe looked at him with deep thought, and the Rebbe said, on that alleyway that you live, there are 2 buildings. He was shocked. How does the Rebbe know that there are only 2 buildings? And the Rebbe continues. The Rebbe says, one building has a makolet. In other words, one building has a grocery store at the bottom of the building, and one building does not. Which building do you live in? And this was like a shocker. He was literally hit by and put in the state of shock. The Rebbe never visited Eretz Yisrael in his life. The Rebbe is all of a sudden showing how much he knows the streets of Jerusalem, literally like a GPS. One second. Like modern day ways. And the Rebbe is going and not only doing modern day ways, but he's telling him there are 2 buildings over there, one with the grocery store, one without the grocery store. Which one do you live in? Again, he was quiet and he was a good boy. He answered the Rebbe. He told the Rebbe that he lives in the building without the grocery store. Okay? And then the Yechidus was over, and they walked out. Though his wife was very happy, he was also very, very happy with the blessing. 9 months later, to the month, they had a child, and he, according to what the Rebbe revealed to him, he went and he opened up his own kollel, in which he was the head of the kollel, going and teaching on a regular basis the students of the kollel, as he understood the Rebbe was suggesting or advising him to do, the instruction that the Rebbe gave him. It's an incredible story, but there are 2 points over here that many times, after telling the entire story, and I heard it more than once, the story, 2 points that sometimes people overlook. What are the 2 points? The first point is in regard to the entire concept of the blessing that the Rebbe gave them. I mean, the Rebbe could have given them the blessing for a child. The Rebbe knows everything, so the Rebbe knows that there's like he knows that there's 2 buildings, one with a grocery store, one without a grocery store. The Rebbe knows the neshamas much better, or much more closer to the neshamas and the needs of every single soul. But no, we see here that when we need something, we have to step up and we have to ask the Rebbe for what we need. Just like the Rebbe many times brings from the laws in Maimonides, in the Yad HaChazaka, in regard to the mitzvah of davening, of tefillah. The Rambam writes that the mitzvah from the Torah to daven is in any given manner, not any liturgy, any language, but when the individual is in need and there is a necessity that is missing by us, then there and then there is a mitzvah for us to go and to ask Hashem to go and to fill our need, that which we are lacking, that which we are missing. And this is the same. The Rebbe wants us to go and to do the mitzvah. It's not that he's waiting until we go and we literally fall, we go and ask the Rebbe. But the Rebbe wants us to go and to ask Hashem, to pray. And therefore, the Rebbe waits until we come and we ask for whatever we need. This is the first thing. Obviously, by the way, the Rebbe ultimately, like a all-merciful father, the Rebbe sees that if there are people that for some reason or another aren't asking, so he sends messengers to go and to give us the encouragement and the arousal to ask. Because otherwise, how are we going to receive? And the Rebbe doesn't want us to remain in pain. But the second thing, which is even more deeper, and this is the 2 buildings on the alleyway, one with the grocery, one without. This person lived in the building without the grocery. What is a grocery store? What is a supermarket, a grocery store? It's a place which goes and supplies food to the public. Now, a grocery store supplies material food, mundane food for the physical body. But this person, he told the Rebbe, he lives in the building without the grocery store. In other words, he's not supplying food to the public. And here, what we were talking about, obviously, is the spiritual food that he could and he should be supplying to the public. The building without the grocery store has to become a building with at least a spiritual grocery store, of which it actually became afterwards later on. The Rebbe should help that we should all be aware and we should all go and ask all our needs, and especially now, the week before the month of Elul, from the blessing of the month of Elul in this previous Shabbos, we're told that from the month of Elul on, so we have the king in the field, and the king in the field comes out of his palace, and he's here in the mundane weekdays, and every single one of us has the permission, and we have the ability to approach the king, and the king shows us a smiling face and a glowing face, and everyone has the ability to ask of the king anything and everything that we need. Obviously, our personal needs, but first and foremost, to have in mind the need of the entire Jewish nation, the need of the entire creation, which is the revelation of the Rebbe Shlita Melech Ha'Moshiach on a good and revealed basis, and it should be immediately now. Yechi Adonenu Moreinu v'Rabbeinu Melech Ha'Moshiach le'olam voed.